Hey guys, how we doing? It is Wednesday, September 8th, and we're doing another episode of Lunch Talk. So thanks for being here. Today we have a special guest, Chris Shroyer, someone I've had the pleasure of working with over the last few years and getting to know. Father, husband, entrepreneur, serial entrepreneur. But one of the things that I like about Chris is while he has an opinion and he has a good job or he does a good job at sharing it in a way that I really do envy. So one of the things you'll get to learn about, like, I love speaking on topics and I like getting into things that can be a little controversial, not because I want to be controversial, but because they're important to me. And I've always envied people that have such a great way of using their words to bring a point across without becoming aggressive or offensive. It's something I personally like working on. It's a soft skill that I think we should all learn how to do. And so I'm looking forward to introducing you to my guest, Chris Shroyer. So if this is the first time that you have ever seen Lunch Talk, welcome. Thanks for being here. We have a way of communicating with you, and we love to stay in touch. So do us a favor. If you're in North America, text lunch, hashtag lunch, to 316-799-8052, 316-799-8052. And it'll get you on the list, and it'll let us know that you're interested and you want to follow along. So anyways, the topic that we're going to have a discussion on today is something that I've been very passionate about as a father of 6 children. And my children range from the age of, bear with me here, 2 to 22. One of the things that you learn being a father of that many children and being someone who's an entrepreneur myself is you have to be very creative at times. We have moved quite often, actually, with the type of work that I've done and the different areas of education that I've taken myself as a college graduate. I've looked at the education system today, and it didn't make sense to me. Now, I went and got an engineering degree because, for those of you who know, some don't know, but I got an electrical engineering degree years after I graduated high school because I felt at that time it was necessary. I don't regret what I did. More importantly for me, growing up the way I did, and in my home, it was already accomplishment that I graduated high school. And so this was something that I wanted to achieve because I didn't think it was possible. But shortly through the process, I realized that it wasn't going to give my family what they needed. And so I started down the path of entrepreneurship. Number one, I couldn't get a normal job. I couldn't get a normal job because how could I work full time? I had 2 children at the time when I started. So it was almost 7 years after graduating high school. I was a young parent. And I needed to basically take care of my family and go to school. So during that process, my mind started to change in how it saw what the world really needed. And as I was in an education system, though I was appreciative of what I was learning, I was starting to get my first glimpse of what I saw as a system that wasn't preparing me to succeed, but preparing me more to fall into a box. I think that's the best way to say it. And I always knew that I had something different to offer. So anyways, I'm going to, without further ado, let me bring in my guest, Chris Shroyer. Donnie, let's go ahead and bring Chris in. We'll make the introduction. Again, guys, if you're watching this, do me a favor. Let Chris know that you're watching and drop a hashtag live for us. Hola to our Facebook users. And thank you, Dave, for dropping hashtag live. Let's give Chris a little round of applause. Oh, I love sound effects. Yeah, let's go. Anyways, Chris, thanks for being here, man. Welcome, Chris Shroyer. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi. Appreciate the time, Rigo. Hola to the Facebook community. Are we on other platforms as well, or is this on?
Yeah, we are live on our YouTube channels. We're live on Facebook in our private group, and we're also live on LinkedIn. So yeah, there's a lot to follow. We've got a lot of work we're doing here. We're going to eventually channel this into one place, but we are live on about 4 different platforms right now.
Love it. Love it. It's the new world. It's where business is going to have to happen as we move forward. And, you know, being having some similar background and hunting and driving our businesses and always wanting to do business face to face as we cut our chops. It's a new world, and I appreciate your leadership in leading the way into the digital world and how to get the message out, how to get content out, how to build relationships, and really grow yourself and grow your tribe as you try to continue to do business in this world, because it's a new world.
It is, and I think we've always enjoyed those conversations, but I love that you've always seen that, and I think you've always been one on cutting edge. It's a lot to do with what you do today. I mean, you've been in the technology industry for 25 years plus minus.
Unfortunately, plus, I would guess. I haven't added up the numbers lately, but yeah, I mean, I always had the aptitude growing up. I was the kid in AV class and would be the one from a production scene and behind the scenes a lot of doing the technology. So it's always been my general aptitude. And so now being able to have this stuff, in you and your family probably know some of the same things, but I would always work hard to entertain myself with technology or to have the gadgets. And now stuff is so much easier to build the studio now that you've built, Rigo, and the way that you're getting content out. I would set with literally, like, to get a song back in the day, instead of hitting the button on my phone, I would play the radio, wait for the FM radio to play the right song, and hit record on my tape player so I could build mixtapes.
Oh man, do you remember when they finally came out with the side-by-side? Yeah. Like, that was the coolest thing, right? And you were like the cool guy. We're gonna date ourselves here, but you were the man when you understood how to bust that little tab, right? Yeah. And make it to where you could record on non-recordable tapes, right? But then you can put together this sweet mixtape. I mean, the 8-track didn't last that long, but I grew up, my father had a Charger and had an 8-track system in it. And I remember having to repair the 8-track and learning how to properly incision the, right? Yeah, to splice the tape. And then you learn that in the tape recorders. But man, I'd have my mixtapes, right? I'd go rolling with my mixtape, depending on what I was doing, have all my right songs. If I was on a date, we all know we had our date mixtapes. It was there was a lot of work that went into that. Today, you can just digitally put together a mix, and it's funny because my daughter's really great she's our DJ. She's a lot of things in our family, but she's our DJ, and we're coming back from the office last night, and I'm struggling. I'm like, Erica, drop me a fat beat. So she takes my phone, and listen, Chris, true story. I finally got a car in just the last 12, it hasn't even been 12 months. It's the first car I've ever owned that didn't have a CD player in it.
I know.
Yeah,
they're not making those.
Made fun of me because they would open up the glove box and all my CDs would fall out. And this was like 2 years ago. And they're like, Dad, seriously. I'm like, what? I love CDs.
I was just explaining to my son, I said, you don't know how good you have it. I said, in fact, it was a big deal when even a CD player was put into your dash. And he couldn't quite grasp the concept. And I said, but for me, in order to take my music with me, it's all now in the palm of your hand, and you can pull up any song in the world at any time. Back in the day, you had to select which CD you wanted, and you actually bought it. And I had milk crates in my trunk of my collection because I didn't want to get caught with a buddy who's like, hey, I want to hear that new Night Ranger tune. and me say, I left it at home. So my trunk was full of CDs, milk crates of
Oh,
CDs.
my gosh, that's funny. Well, you know, it didn't take long for it to increase, and yeah, we are today. And you know, when I look at education, right? So the question was, is the education system failing us, right? Uh, there's so many awesome quotes that are out there, but Mark Twain, one of the ones I like, Mark Twain said, I've never let schooling interfere with my education. It was a quote that I always liked. There's one that was made by Albert Einstein that my daughter likes to reference, but it's really interesting because when I was going through college, I had started college late, quite a few years later in my life, but I started in 2002. So think about this. I was right at the change of um, the 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 .com boom. Okay, my minor was in computer science, computer engineering. My major was in communications. I didn't even have a computer till almost my junior year. I would stay there at class. I'd go to the lab. I would get my homework done there. And then it wasn't till later on when I started to realize, you know, I should probably have a computer. So I built my first, right? Now I'd had computers previously for work or things like that. In fact, I think my first laptop was a Gateway 3500. It was a big deal because it had
the spotted cows.
yeah, it had 2 GB. The hard drive was 2 GB. It was a big deal, and it was super thin. It was like that thin.
So your first didn't have a floppy. You were using the 3.5.
Yeah, that was my first personal. It was a 3.5 disc, and I opted into something which was going to be the new craze, which was the super disk drive. So that was 128 megabytes on one super disk drive because it was this new technology called CD-ROM, way too expensive, was never going to make it.
Yeah, so, not going to make it. And in the middle, I joined the iOmega crowd where you had those little cassette like storage devices.
Yep. So, I mean, there's different evolutions, right, of this, but, you know, here I am getting into this, learning what I needed to learn, became the techie nerd of my group. A few years later, my children are coming of age, and I started to realize very quickly how fast technology was advancing. Today, my 2-year-old, this is one of the things that this is what is capturing me into this place where I'm realizing, why do we even have today's public education system? Now, let's be clear, right, Chris? There's a difference between education and the school system, right? I'm not saying, and I want to make this clear, that we shouldn't be educated or we shouldn't be getting educated or seeking ways to be educated. We have to learn. That's what books are for. That's what mentorship is for, right? But the school system as a whole, I started seeing it fail my children. And I started seeing, how was it that today my 2-year-old can speak in Spanish, in Japanese. Okay. He's saying numbers now in some other language. We haven't figured it out yet. Spanish, Japanese, and English. And he's doing this from a YouTube Kids channel where he's watching. At 2 years old, he can count all the way to 100, count in tens, knows his ABCs, and he's reading. And he's learning this from videos that are out there. And like, I have this recorded. I wish I should have uploaded it, but he was sitting there counting in Japanese. And I'm like, I'm trying to capture it. I play the video back again. The Japanese starts going, and then he starts counting in sequence in Spanish as the voice on the YouTube is doing it in Japanese. And I'm just sitting there floored. I've watched each of my kids as technology has increased. I've watched them increase with it. Right? Where this little 2-year-old's fat little fingers are sitting there sliding. He understands how to swipe. He's pissed when he walks up to a screen and he can't.
Yeah, I'm sure he heads up to flat screen TVs and tries to.
He doesn't understand. He doesn't understand why he can't cycle through apps, why he can't make selections. Just to me, this blows me away because I remember getting my first smartphone. Right. So think about, I mean, just so we look at this and I say, okay, this is the way education is happening now. You know how much time I've invested in my children from the perspective of teaching and training and mentoring for the new world. And anybody who knows us well enough knows that my company and business is being built and ran with my family. And it's something I'm very proud of because I could run these kids up to anybody who's been in that line of work for years. My son produces and builds this entire program. And he's done it in a few months. And he's learned how to put together the right sound and video and everything. And we're learning constantly when there's people that are going to be in debt for 20 years to learn what he learned with a few hours of YouTube, right?
Yeah. So, I think it's about taking responsibility for yourself. So I can relate it to the health system. I can relate it to the food system. I mean, everything's built to the least common denominator because we have to take care of everyone. That's the whole public nature of it all. But at the end of the day, it's about what you make of it for yourself. And Donnie's it's something he enjoys. It's his passion. It's his aptitude. And so he's all in. And the democratization of information and, the fact that you no longer have to take information from a newspaper, from a teacher, it's all at your fingertips. And it just amazes me at what's at our fingertips. We obviously haven't been able to, see that when we were growing up. But as everyone gets out of the way and you can have direct access to the information, it's how things get done. And even the Google founders, I mean, they grew up in a Montessori education system where it wasn't the public system. I had the fortunate opportunity that my son spent his first few years in that system. It doesn't go any higher in the age group in our area, or he would still be studying in that. But it's about getting out of the way. It's about giving a framework that allows you to use your own creativity, passions, and focus. And so, for him and to watch him explode and watch Donnie, I mean, I had the pleasure of meeting Donnie a few years ago and watching him take responsibility for his own learning, his own education, not necessarily schooling, because as you said, and he's going to be able to run circles around those that went through and learned about theories, and because he's applying, it's about that application of knowledge, and he's learned how to apply the knowledge. So to me, that's what it's really all about, is taking that personal responsibility. You go to a healthcare system and you just show up at the door and say, hey, I'm sick. They're going to run you through a system. But if you show up and you take responsibility for that, here's what we're going to do, here's how we're going to handle it, here's what I need, then you're going to have a better experience and a better outcome.
So I want to get more into that Montessori system and talk a little bit more about it, because this is really interesting. As I've seen over the last few years, a lot of different methods of educating. We started to see some stuff years back. There was a program called ABC Mouse. It was like a no-name software that you could buy, and it's become very popular now, but it led one of my sons to be reading at a 4th and 5th grade level by the time he was 3. Okay. And it went with another program called K-12 at that time that was some folks coming out of MIT, figuring out ways. And I think there's a lot of similarities here where it allowed you, like today, we've made some decisions to pull a couple of our younger children back out of the public education system. Number one, because I'm not having my kids go through another year of wearing masks. period. End of story. That is not how they're going to learn. They're not going to be sitting in boxes, and their children, they're not going to be in an environment where they're not allowed to be within 6 feet of each other. If that's the case, they can just stay home, and we'll find other ways to create social interaction with children. And that's my choice as a parent. That's what we've chose to do. And the benefits have continuously outweighed the negative responses that people will give. So you yourself, a parent, a little later in life, you started seeing some issues. You found that your son wasn't, am I wrong? He wasn't getting the education or the attention that he needed. So you found this system. Tell me about it.
Yeah, no, it was early. And we chose at a young age, preschool, and then his first few years of elementary school could be done through Montessori. So, to me, and I'm aware of the ABC mouse that you mentioned. I've never been through it or anything, but I'm aware of it. To me, though, those are all alternative systems, processes, frameworks that allow you to learn. And from a Montessori standpoint, it was simply a framework that we appreciated. My wife is an educator. Her degree is in elementary ed with a minor in art, and her feeling has always been it's about providing that framework and an environment to learn. And it's the Montessori philosophy has been around for some time, but it's really about individuals learning, following their passions. There's not a set necessary structure. So it's self-learning, it's self-guided leadership to take responsibility for your own learning. Even at 4 years old, what do you want to learn today was really up to you. And so Griffin would show up in the morning, and if he wanted to go learn to build blocks, and what they would do is take lessons out of each of those types of, even their playground is built very specifically around learning lessons and being able to put math and such into everyday learning and activities. And so it's just very self-paced. It's kind of get the structure out of the way and let the students learn their way, what they want to learn, what their passions are, what they're good at, their aptitude. But it's where he learned music. It's where he learned architecture. He was building bridges. I mean, they'll take, the types of toys that they have in the room are very specific. And when you see a child migrate to certain toys, you start to develop a general idea of their aptitude and their focus as a child and what interests them. And you build those individual plans then around those people. And that then allows you to really grow as an individual. Now, when he had to then move to the public system, because the Montessori is only so many years here, the elementary teachers will roll their eyes. Oh, here comes one of those Montessori, because they're not going to sit in their seat. They're not going to follow the rules. They're going to want to follow their passions, not follow your hoops. And so it becomes a challenge when you move from the Montessori to the public. But I think for Griffin, it's been a good experience to understand a little bit about both. But I believe is it Sergio, the founder at Google? I believe both of the Google founders or Alphabet founders were both Montessori students. And so that creativity and, that passion to follow your general aptitudes and such was driven by them. They're big believers in that process.
It's interesting. You made a comment about essentially staying in your lane, not sitting still. These guys aren't going to follow the rules. So it's really interesting. I spoke to you a little bit offline prior to getting on the show, but we're going to be putting out a fairly large, timeline of this. We've been collaborating a number of different researches that have been done. Again, it's been it's been a very large passion for me and for my children, because this has been something I've always believed deeply in, as there's so many young men and women out there that I've realized are missing the opportunity to find the best of themselves because they're in a system that was designed, in my opinion, and from what my research is, to extinguish those things. There's an individual. He is the father of what we know today of our education system. I believe you know this name, but Horace Mann. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, yeah.
So there's not a whole lot about him other than some of the beginning. They didn't talk a lot about how this came to be, but essentially one of the things that I put in my comments here was that I believe that we're living in an era now where our children are being prepared to essentially find the new parental figure, the state being the mother and the education system, or the state and the education system being the mother and father for them. And it's interesting because I had said that and always felt this before I understood this comment. Horace Mann made this comment, said the state is the father of children. And when you learn where this original education system came from, you learn that Horace had gone out to essentially research and find where they were doing a central free-for-all type of state-funded education system, and he had found it in Prussia at the time, which was prior to modern-day Germany. Unfortunately, what the history books will you'll find if you dig deep enough, but Horace was also a bit of the precursor to the modern-day neo-Nazi movement. No, we don't know that, because we don't teach that. But unfortunately, when you start to look at Horace and you start to look at where this was coming from, the birth of the Industrial Revolution, the need to build armies and to build factory workers, when you look at all of this and you see, like, even Benjamin Franklin was quoted to say that the higher levels of education, places that we know today, like Oxford and, Stanford and Brown and all of these different places, should never have ever been designed for those of wealth, but those who have the aptitude and have earned it. So, founding fathers had both positive and negative influence in today's modern school system, where I see now, like, we have children that are going of ages below the age of 10 and 12 years old into a school system for 8 hours a day. And unfortunately, now we live in a modern era where in almost all cases, you have to have two working parents in order to live a comfortable life. That's a whole nother topic we'll be getting into, where, right, yesterday's $100,000 salary is today's $50,000 salary, right? And so we've got all of these things coming together, where now we as parents are spending less and less time feeding our own children with our values, principles, family culture, moral standards, any sort of faith or religious practices. And we're now giving them to the state to indoctrinate. And we lose the impactful position that we have on our children. I'd love your opinion on this. Being a home that has education already built into it. Your wife's an educator. You've always been strong in education. What's your viewpoint on that?
Well, I think that has changed with the emergence of the information age. So I agree that the system would have been built to identify the built at the time of an industrial revolution, and that we haven't adapted. I'm starting to see some adaptation with being able to access, Google, and the school now, everyone gets a laptop and, or an iPad, processes to be able to get to the information. But to me, in the information age now, I can go past the state.
Yeah, that's right.
And do I prefer the United States process to China's? Yeah, because I think we must seek the truth.
Yep.
And we have to get to really the bottom line. What is the truth? And what are the facts? What are the science? I mean, it's really about getting to that truth and to the root of the education, whether it be the language, and the ability now for an individual to go seek that base education and that truth is more powerful than it's ever been. And so while the state certainly can define the curriculum, and there's a whole lot of discussion happening around that right now, it's still upon the parent and the household to be able to drive the education and the learnings that they want to drive. I'm concerned about what the state would be providing for education to the children, but I'm as much or maybe even more concerned about what the technology provides and where are you gathering that information. So what we teach with Griffin, for instance, is you have to understand the source of the information and ask one more question. Because just because it's in front of you, and whether it's a teacher that told you or whether it was YouTube that told you,
right,
seek the truth, find the transparency, and you will find that within who was telling you, what was their agenda. I mean, it's really about trying to get to the bottom of it, not just because it's in front of you. But I was thinking about that. We went to Chicago for the weekend, so on the drive home, Griffin's in the back seat. He's checking out YouTube, and we're talking about different things, and he'll go, learn about it while we're chatting it. We went to the Art Institute over the weekend, so we were talking about different artists and learning about those artists and their past. But I was thinking about, wow, what an amazing amount of information. The world's at your fingertips, and we can sit here and discuss it. It's my responsibility to teach him how to learn and how to ask that next question
to seek
to get to the truth.
Yeah, to seek that knowledge.
And so, coming through the system and least common denominator, it becomes a challenge, though, because as Candy lives, my wife lives every day. There's a parent lottery out there, and some kids didn't win.
Yeah.
And where we fail are those that fall behind, and they don't have the opportunity to the technology or the framework that a parent gives them to learn the right way and right from wrongs. And unfortunately, the system has to be built to those least common denominators.
Yeah.
And you're only as good as your best teacher in that year, and there's a lot of them fighting hard for each one of the students, but at the end of the day, unfortunately it's still a dog eat dog world, and you've got to take responsibility for yourself and your own.
No, and you bring up something good, because we've got educators very, very close to us, and so by no means, when I talk this way, it's just like anything. When you look at any area of society that needs reform, as we look at issues that have happened here that have been very prevalent in the news, we look at the need for reform in law enforcement, law officers as a whole, right? Love and care for their community and sacrifice themselves every day. And there are those that bring negative spotlight to the profession. It's the same with educators. The majority of them do not walk in with this right attitude, like, haha, I'm here to indoctrinate the child for the state. They're out there because they have a heart. You definitely didn't get into the education system for the money, right? You didn't plan on being rich. You did it for the passion. And I think that's what makes educators good versus not good. When somebody is passionate about what they're doing, they always said, if would you do what you're doing today in your career for free, right? If you would, then you're in the right place, right? If it's who you are. And so whenever you meet a true educator, they're always educating, right? Off the job or on. And I think that says a lot about that character. But like I said, this is no way looking at that. When I look at where we are today, you know, we've got this growth right now in the economy where there's a need for people to get to work. And we've discussed this a few times on the show. Like, why is there this shortage of able-bodied folks working? And when you look at the ones who are working, what you'll find, which is pretty prevalent as a, you said a common denominator, I'll use that again, as a common denominator, is a behavior and an attitude of doing a job well done and getting out there and creating for yourself your income, not to be given to you by anyone else. So we have right now a country that has passed a number of stimuluses that have started to reward the lazy. And so anybody who was on the fence, this is my opinion, and I'm not getting into politics, but it's clear because now we have a shortage of good workers. And there's no reason when there are literally businesses booming everywhere right now. And yeah, there was a change in how a lot of businesses were being done after the start and progress of COVID. But I have seen some incredible adaptations in these companies where they figured out different ways to serve the customer, keep everyone safe, and provide new types of jobs, new ways of learning and becoming educated in a new way of serving the customer. So when I look at today's system of educating our children, and specifically as adults, how we put them into the workforce, this is where I start to question it. And I wonder how much of what we have today is even useful when, like you said, outside of specific areas that I look at, like, you know, any certain medical professions and things like that, right? If I'm going to become an engineer, as a mechanical engineer, there's not as many avenues in YouTube, right, that I'm going to learn. But at the same time, what about internships? What's happened to internships, working under, right, a mechanical engineer and learning the trade through someone's actual hands and experience to give somebody the same level of respect as someone that has a piece of paper but has got no actual physical hands-on experience and beating out somebody for a job who has 10 years of actual experience.
Yeah, and I've seen, in fact, I think it was mandated at the federal level as well, more of a swing or a push towards true application, true job experience or apprenticeship, and more emphasis on that and less on necessarily the education, because at the end of the day, it's about getting a job done. And so I think as you hit the pandemic and the lack of workforce that's available now, I think you have multiple things happening. One is the incentive to not work and your ability to bring in $700-800 a week and not even leave the house. That's a pretty good incentive for some people. So you have that. You have the baby boomers who are now getting close to retirement. The stock market went up. You know, you could go out and make a living, but I'm going to rethink what I do. So, you know, you kind of take pause for a moment and review that. Even though my son frequently calls me boomer, I'm actually not old enough to be a baby boomer, nor old enough yet to retire. But you know, you got people that rethink that on what I'll call the top end of the scale. Bottom end of the scale, hey, I can get easy money by just staying at home. So, you know, I think you kind of get hit at both ends of that spectrum. And then in the middle, I think it was an opportunity for a lot of people just to reevaluate what they are doing, what they want to do, and what might they do next. And so as you go through that process, I think everyone just slowed down. And, you know, I think it's a bit of an object in motion stays in motion. So when the country is running fast and furious and hard and everybody's getting after it, everyone tended to stay in that mode, but then it's a big halt. Now you got to get the machine going, and you've got to get everybody up off the seat and get moving. And I think as it relates to the education system, I do think that that's a challenge. If the system was built, in the Industrial Revolution, you no longer have the opportunity to take my father, for instance, retired from Maytag. He worked 36 years at the same place. That just isn't going to happen anymore. And I remember my younger brother, he took a job at Maytag, and I told him at the time, and I was the bad guy for saying this, but I said, you will not retire from Maytag. It's not going to happen. That just isn't how it works anymore. And sure enough, it's now Maytag's now Whirlpool, and all those jobs have changed, and they've, offshored things. And so, the world changes, and, there's not a lot of blacksmiths in the country anymore. You've got to learn to adapt to what is new. You're adapting. I think, things like this content, the show, you're learning to adapt in other ways to push content, build relationships. And that's the same way. If you sit and you want to be a blacksmith the rest of your life, you're not going to have a real good income. And the system's got to be able to teach us to learn, to adapt, and change, and not just come out and now I can be a really good worker for 36 years for some Fortune 1000 company.
So here's something that's interesting as we talk about that. So I've got some information here that we had done some research on. Johnny's pulling up. Says factory workers were trained to make around $12.49 per hour on an average across this country in today's economy, which due to inflation is about 40 cents. Okay, it would be about 40 cents per hour in the 1700s for the higher paying jobs. So we know what's really interesting here is that these $12.50 or whatever per hour puts people at about right about $26,000 in annual income. Here's what's interesting about that. Prior to this boom of entrepreneurship, the same money on an annual basis has been the exact amount of annual wage that they've been making since the 1700s. The inflation has changed, but literally, if you take the time of when we were creating these factory jobs and we were teaching, right, people how to clock in, clock out, how to go work a system for 8 hours, how to fall in line with this. I'm going to follow what I'm being told to do, whether or not I like it, right? We see this Montessori system where now a child can go learn what they want. Well, that doesn't work if I want you to be a worker who's going to follow direction, right? I don't need you thinking for yourself. If you think for yourself, then that means I have to pay you more because you're going to start becoming innovative. And that's scary, because if you start figuring out how to be better at me at my job, then now I don't have a job, and so I don't want you here, right? But it's interesting when you take a look at history and you look at what's happening here. I listen to your story. We are in a position now where we have, like you said, the power of our fingertips like never before, Chris. We can take information from anywhere in the world, and just like anything else, it has to be vetted. You can't just take it for what it's worth. But it doesn't take long for us to find information we need, connect dots, go back and put things together to realize, wow, I don't need to go hire contractors for a lot of stuff in my home. I'm not saying it's the right thing to do, but I could learn how to tile. I can learn how to do my own ducting systems. I could learn how to floor. I could learn how to paint. I mean, think about this. To do it yourself, do it at home, picking up new skills, learning how to troubleshoot things that can never be done before are being done now. And I can tell you, I, for one, am so grateful for all these people that decided I'm going to film this and put it on YouTube. Every time I find something, I'm shocked. I'm like, dude, thank you so much.
It
Like,
demystifies. I mean, it demystifies everything. It just takes the mystery out of so much. And usually it's just two or three key things that would
yeah,
hold you up traditionally, like, well, I don't know what's behind this next panel in my dryer. We've done that. I mean, I'm
yeah,
fortunate in that my wife, she talks about it interchanneling her inner Frank, who was her dad.
inner
He
Frank.
was somebody who was, he fixed things out of necessity. It's how he grew up. His family grew up in the Depression, so it was, you don't throw things away, you fix
Yep,
them.
yep.
And my dad was a bit of the same way, and growing up with Maytag, he knew how to fix stuff, and even though the Maytag repairman, um, but and that's the environment that Griffin's growing up in. Is you fix stuff. In fact, over the weekend we fixed the dryer. I mean, and you knew what parts to go get, and you demystified all of it. But we had to bounce onto YouTube and pull out a couple of tips because we weren't sure what was next. My wife's tiled our bathroom with that, and so he's learning that. And what I've appreciated, what I have seen the public system change, and Griffin went into the public system because we've seen some of that change. He's now at a STEAM academy. So today he began a course in robotics. And, one of the things
How
I
old is
told him,
Griffin again?
he's 12, so seventh grade.
That's incredible.
In the spring, he built his own computer. You'd mentioned earlier about building your own computer. He just came to me one day and said, Dad, I'd like to build my own gaming computer. And I said, okay, well, I've never done it. I've fixed stuff and I've replaced hard drives and things, and I get it. I get the thing, but I haven't done it, so let's do it together, and it'll be our first. But I said, come up with the budget, come up with the build list. Here's the components you're going to need. We'll bounce it off of people that do this more like every day, and we were able to accomplish it. And we did it together, and it just demystifies things, and it puts power in your hands.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a skill. It's a power now that he has. And how empowering. I mean, Taekwondo is another thing he's involved in. Breaking the board isn't that magical, but once you get the confidence to be able to do it, that's what that's all about. I mean, now being able to kick the board, hit the board from different kicks, different.
I think it's pretty magical. I don't care what age you are, man. It feels good. Yeah.
Well, but that's what it's about, is that feeling good. It's that empowering.
Yeah.
And now to be able to do it from the multiple ways. And you talked about language. So he learns Korean. He can count in Korean. I mean, all of the things that are available to you now, it's your responsibility to go tackle those. And if you want to sit back and live off the government, unfortunately, the government will enable that. But you do have the opportunity to differentiate yourself in the world.
And I think free thinkers, entrepreneurs, intrapreneurs, I talk a lot about that because to me, they're the same spirit. They're the same personality. The person who wants to create and build can be doing this for someone else. It doesn't always have to be on their own. That's a different risk. Being a founder yourself and a serial entrepreneur, you get it. You didn't become somebody that cared about how you were building something in the legacy just overnight. It was already who you were. So you did that within an organization, and then it led you to a place where you have created and been a founder or part of companies where you've invested not only your finances, but you've invested yourself, right? And I think that's becoming more prevalent. You look today, information is becoming easier to grab. We're both in the wind industry. So let's switch gears a little bit there, because we're looking at an industry that has historically given us one or two ways of capturing information and connecting and networking. I'm curious to think, as our listeners are looking, how many are listening and watching, how many of you actually think that our upcoming show in December, why would we do an industry-wide win show in the middle of December, right before the largest holiday season we have in this country, Christmas and New Year, if it's even going to go through? Personally, I don't have very much confidence since they've already canceled one of their other very large shows under less stringent conditions that are happening right now in the United States. And I look at it and go, how long do you think people are waiting? That's why we started doing this show, Chris. Number one, I didn't want to wait. I love talking to people. I like having discussions. This is something I think about. So, I want other people to get involved. I want other people to have discussion with me. But the truth is even if it was just me and you, that's all I care about. It was just having a discussion with you, and others get to join, just like if you and I were talking about this in person. And I said, you know what? I don't know what others are doing, but I know what I'm going to do. I want to go live, and we'll figure it out. And we've done a lot of these in different settings. We have our other show we do on Facebook, and we've learned a lot, and we've crashed and burned quite a bit. Right. I agree. Sean says, COVID aside, it's such a bad time to hold show. I agree. It's a terrible time. Why in the world will we do this at the end of the year? Like, this is the time that most of us, we know this is a typically historically down time in our industry, right? Wind's blowing.
And travel.
Yeah, travel, holidays, family. This is when we're usually banking up our PTO. Like, this is a horrible time to do the show. So I'm curious to see what the industry is going to do. And honestly, is it going to have the same level of benefit? So I look at what's happening in our ability to grab education, share, talk, communicate with others, get our business names across, start to share with people what we do, how we can serve them, where our value is. And you've got an organization that says, well, we're going to charge you this amount of money, and here's the benefits of it. But by the way, we're going to continue for almost 2 years now to remove the opportunity. I'm not saying they did it on purpose, but all it did was expose, in my opinion, a weakness in an area in our current market that I believe people are finding ways to fill the void. I don't know. That's my thoughts on that. Hey, listen, if you guys are watching right now, I'm sorry, we've been kind of getting this conversation, but do me a favor, #live if you're just joining us. If you are watching this on a replay, #replay, but let us know what your thoughts are. We've got a few of you jumping in. We want to hear more. I'd love to hear your ideas, whether you agree or not agree. It's okay. I'm just trying to have this open discussion because this is a passion of mine. We're joined by our guest, Chris Shroyer, co-founder and president of EdgeData, parent company to a company by the name of Blade Edge. Blade Edge is an analytics data company. Share me a little bit about Blade Edge so that our public and our audience can know what it is that you do, Chris.
Sure, absolutely. So, in our roots, our DNA is really about the data. And so we're utilizing, in this case, drones to capture the data. As you'd mentioned, the analytics portion of that. So how do we extract value from that data? It allows owners and operators to better manage their inventory, increase their uptime, increase the efficiency of their turbines, as well as extend the life of those assets. And in the state of Iowa, 60% of our electricity is now produced from wind energy. So it's a critical component. And we learned in Texas over the winter, when those critical components of your generation are down, life's not good. And so we're about making life better. We're about making more efficient assets and extending the life of those assets, especially as you decentralize energy sources to wind. It's important that you learn how to manage those assets in a healthy way. And we're utilizing data to be able to do that.
That's awesome. Well, if you want to learn more about what it is that Chris and the team does, those of you guys who know me long enough know that I've spent some time working with Blade Edge in the past. And I've always loved their team and what they've done, the level of technology they've advanced with, and just their care and passion for their customers. So this isn't a paid promotion. I'm letting you guys know that right now. Chris is here because Chris is a friend of mine and I enjoy his company. And I asked him to be on the show to have this conversation. He got like an hour notice of what we were talking about. So that's usually the way it goes. It's whatever I'm thinking about. Sometimes we plan ahead, but this has just been on my mind quite a bit. I've been watching quite a few different documentaries on this and doing a lot of research on it. And lately I've been doing a lot of studying as we've moved into our new facility. And I cannot wait to show you guys the setup. Right now you can see I'm still green screening it. My mineral water disappears. We're still green screening it because we're in the process of building out the set, but it's incredible today. Today, I'm not even working this. My son, who works for the company, who's now 100% producing and directing the show, I'm sitting here at my set working on putting out content for you guys. It's just incredible what we're doing and how we're growing and how I'm so excited to get more information out to you, getting more long form interviews out to you, and just giving you guys an opportunity to find information and learn from others. I have spent years benefiting from so many who put stuff on YouTube. This is what I said, well, I can give back. What if I can help people in the areas of leadership and mentorship, sales and business development? You know, I would have appreciated more of that when I was coming up. What if I can help people learn those things? And so I thought, what a great idea. Let's do the show. Listen, if you guys are enjoying what you're watching, let me know, please. If you'd like me to get into some conversation and topics, put it in, drop it in the comments. Let me know. I want to know from you what you guys would like to hear. Who would you like to see? Who would you like to meet? If you'd like to be a part of the program, just let us know. You could always join our community too. This is an important way of doing it. It's right. It connects right here into my cell phone. And that's if you're in North America, still haven't found a way for those of you who watch who are international, and we're very grateful for you. But 316-799-8052, #lunch or #live. You'll find out about all of our live program, but #lunch to 316-799-8052. You should be down here. Yep, it's down there. And it'll join our community. And that way we've got a lot of material that's coming as we get ready to drop this this new episode. We'll have PDFs and things like that we'll share with you that you could take and, you know, share with your family, look at it yourself, make your own opinion. But things that I'm passionate about, I want to bring up, but I'd love to know what you guys want to hear too. And Chris, thank you for your time today. I'm glad you were here. Thanks for sharing your views and your opinion and just being a part of the conversation.
Thank you. I enjoyed our lunch talk. I look forward to 10 years from now, looking back and saying, wow, I was in the early lunch talks.
That's it. The next time you're up in Wichita, Kansas, we'll just have to do it. We'll have to do it live right here. We should have everything ready, and maybe we'll sit down and have a cigar.
Oh, that would be perfect. Kind of maybe you get that old Merv Griffin set that Kramer had on Seinfeld, and you can have the chairs and walk in, the whole deal.
Well, I've got chairs coming. Wait, you'll see.
Right.
Yeah,
sweet.
You'll see.
You just need a good sidekick now.
Well, I've got Donnie, and for those who watch our other show, our ATF show, everybody knows Donnie on that one. They don't really know him here. He's just Mr. Producer on this side. He's just sitting in the background, helping me out. But listen, you guys, thanks for being here again. Let me know what your thoughts are. And let's join again next week. Actually, next week, let me tell you right now, we've got some folks coming in and we're going to be spending some time with them here at our new office. So we're probably going to move our Wednesday show to Thursday, because I believe we're going to be busy during that part of the afternoon. So next week it'll be Thursday. We'll try to get some notifications out for everybody. I don't like changing the time, but you don't get too often to spend time with good folks, and they're going to be here just for a day. So I want to spend that time with them. But anyways, thank you guys for being here. Thank you, Chris. I appreciate it. And I look forward to seeing you guys next week on Lunch Talk. Please drop a comment. Let me know, subscribe to our YouTube channel. That you can find a lot more information there as well. We've got so much more that we're going to be bringing you, the community. And I'm looking forward to bringing this out. Now that we're in our new location, there's a lot of work that we're going to be doing to get information in your hands. And hopefully this stuff will be benefiting to you. So if you like what we're doing, again, just let us know. Like, subscribe, and follow and share with people that you know. And hopefully we'll see you again next week. So we'll talk to you later. Till next week. Be safe.